All right, so I had the chance to get out for a little late season archery whitetail hunting. This was a little doe I got I went out for 2 days, got this little doe on the first day. And I had an opportunity to see the results of a Sevr 1.5 inch hybrid right beside a Ironwill S-125. So I've been wanting to try these Sevr hybrids for a while. I'm a little bit naturally cynical when it comes to mechanical broadheads. I've never had one fail on me. In fact, this is the first animal I've ever even killed with a mechanical. But just the nature of the fact that there's so many more variables and so many more things that can fail, it makes me somewhat hesitant. And I've been using Ironwills for over 5 years so far. Everything I shoot with an Ironwill dies. So just fixed blade heads in general make me feel more comfortable. Try and ignore shot placement. This was not an ideal shot placement. The doe was walking. There was a bunch of other deer around. They were already kind of on high alert. So I decided not to, make a bleat and try and stop the doe in her tracks because I was more worried she was going to run. And it was about an 18-yard shot, so I knew even if it wasn't going to be perfect, it was going to do enough damage to put her down and let me finish the job. However, this is the entrance hole right here. And you can see, absolute devastation. All right, so let's just get the tape measure out here. When I look at the entrance hole, it is 1 3/4 inches from side to side. So I'm going to add some close-up footage of this later on. So we have 1 3/4 inches going in. And then over here on the other side, there's a little bit of fat that's come down on the one side that's just stretched from the way she's hanging. But I have an equal 1 3/4 inch cut here on the other side. Now, in addition to that, I don't think I can spin this around. No. Let me get another light. So we can see here that on the entrance hole, I came in between 2 ribs, but then on the exit hole, I've actually completely smashed through this 1 rib. You can see that right here. I also severed some of the spinal cord. She just dropped like a sack of potatoes. Now, if we look at the Ironwill, basically maybe 1 inch just over on the exit, and again, just over 1 inch on the entrance. So let me back up. And before we go through the differences, let me explain how she was actually killed so it makes more sense. Basically, she was walking, dumped an arrow in her. It was a little far back, a little high, knocked her legs out from underneath her, totally could not use her back legs. And then she was laying there for a second. She rolled over, and I had a perfectly clear shot from the bottom of her chest cavity, and I knew the arrow was going to go completely through and exit the other side of her body, going right through the boiler room. So it's just like a double lung pass through side to side, but I went bottom to top. So I shot the arrow in near the breastbone, and then the Ironwill exited here. So let me talk about the performance of each of the arrows. So when the Sevr went through, it came in between 2 ribs here, and then smashed through one of the ribs on the other side, and then the fletchings basically got stuck here. I'm assuming because a lot of that exit momentum was impeded by breaking this far rib. Now, this is a very small whitetail doe, but interesting to note that the Sevr essentially got a pass through. Like if this animal was to get up and run away, there was literally only 4 inches of arrow in her. I'm sure the rest of that arrow would have peeled out and fell off. So it was essentially a pass through after breaking one of the ribs. So that's particularly interesting. So then She drops, she kind of pulls herself forward a couple steps. I can see she's in a lot of pain. Gotta end this quickly. The first opportunity I'm given, she rolls over on her side. I know I can go straight through the boiler room from the bottom. Bing! Ironwill zips through like hot butter. That's the thing that's really hard to compete with an ultra sharp fixed blade. So enters just to the one side of the breastbone down here, exits just to one side of the spine here, and literally dead in 2 seconds, instantly expired. But complete pass through on the Ironwill, incomplete pass through on the Sevr. Ironwill, when it's all said and done, is about an inch hole, both entrance and exit. Didn't have to break any bones on the way in or break any bones on the way out. Sevr is about an 1 3/4 hole on the way in and on the way out, and was able to break one of these ribs on the way out. So, listen, it's encouraging to see that it broke the offside rib and still had enough energy to push out the other side. I'll insert a picture here of what the broadhead looked like afterwards. The one side had kind of collapsed, and if I grabbed it with my fingers, I could kind of swivel it back and forth. Now, she did a little bit of rolling around on the ground. That could have happened afterwards, I don't know. But the broadhead was definitely like, it did not hold up. The integrity of the broadhead was done. That broadhead is dead, 100%. The other thing that happened on that hunt that was just notable, I was able to hunt the next day because I had a buck tag as well. So when I got in the next morning and I went to take out one of the Sevr mechanical broadheads, I think what had happened, it had frozen into my quiver on the walk into the stand, and I couldn't get it out of the quiver. So either the two heads on the front of the blade were like stuck down in the foam, or the head itself was frozen into the quiver, and when I finally got it out of the quiver, it had cut the elastic and popped open on me, which essentially means out in the field it's useless. I didn't have any spare elastics to reclose the broadhead, and to be honest, when I'm sitting in a stand, I don't want to be fiddling around with that kind of stuff anyways. Which kind of still leaves me 50-50 on mechanical broadheads. Like, what if that was my only arrow? And I know there's a lot of stuff you could say, like, oh, I could have took more time, I could have looked more closely, but listen, this is archery hunting. I want the ability to just reach into my quiver and pull out an arrow. And when I reached into my quiver and pulled out an arrow, that arrow then became useless because of the closing mechanism on that Sevr broadhead. Now, I'm not saying that is a complete condemnation of Sevr broadheads. I know a lot of absolute killers who love this broadhead. So if it works for you, that's great. But I would say that my conclusion after this short 2-day hunt, I know minimal experimentation, is that I'm still 50-50 with mechanicals. I will say that when put to the test under pretty ideal conditions, I was able to get a pass through and I was able to break an offside bone, although a very small offside bone. This is a very small whitetail doe, like 100-pound deer. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. Do I think this is getting through a rib bone in an elk? I do not think that this proves that it would. Maybe it would, but it certainly doesn't prove that it would. So on one hand, I'm getting a pass through, I'm breaking a bone. On another hand, I have a broadhead that's now completely useless because it got stuck in my quiver. That has never once happened to me with a fixed blade. However, fixed blade, you know, 1-inch hole, mechanical, 1 3/4, 1 3/4. The blood loss was catastrophic from these two holes. Like I'll try and insert some pictures here. Like it just poured out on the snow everywhere. So, and there was very little blood coming out of this. Now, obviously, she'd already lost a lot of blood from this one, so it's not really apples to apples. So it is not 100% conclusive, but the academic broadhead testing people do, I think, is great. But ultimately, I think what we really need to do is like shoot more animals with more broadheads. I'm going to try and line up a trip to Texas, try and shoot a bunch of pigs, or even go down south next fall and shoot a bunch of does and like really catalog the differences between the impacts and the devastation caused by different broadheads. So anyways, there's some data on my field experience with the Sevr 1.5-inch hybrid broadheads. If you've got any more questions, feel free to drop them down below. Happy to answer them. If you could engage with the content, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. And as always, thank you for tuning in.